So how did you become a people pleaser? And how do you stop doing it? That's our topic for today. We're going to dive into people pleaser psychology to help you get clear on both of those questions. Now, if you clicked on this video, I bet you already know what it feels like. Where on the front side, being nice or helpful feels like a choice, not recognizing until later that your version of helping was more of a compulsion. And you know what it feels like on the backside too. Overextended, ignored, underappreciated, or hurt and embarrassed when the people you were trying so hard to show up for tell you to just back off or mind your own business. You've been accused of being too much, overcommitted, or just plain nosy. You know that wasn't your intention, but here you are, licking your wounds, wondering how you've done this again. Understanding the psychology of people pleasers is a great plan. When you know how you got here, you can develop the understanding and work on the emotional healing to stop people pleasing for good. We'll discuss strategies for change in a moment, but let's begin with how we develop this habit in the first place. I think this is going to be a powerful lesson for anyone struggling with people pleasing. If you get into it and agree, do me a favor, and please give those 3 clicks, like, subscribe, and share. When YouTube sees those things along with your comments, it makes a big difference in whether this video shows up for others, so I'd really appreciate it. Okay, let's get back to it. Remember, everything about the human condition boils down to one basic thing: survival. From birth, we seek safety and avoid danger, including both physical and relational danger. This is where the concept of social pain comes in. Research has found that when people experience a social rejection, the same regions of the brain light up as when they experience actual physical pain. This means someone being disappointed in you and someone physically hurting you can create equally strong motivations. So, when you imagine the look on your partner's face when you disappoint them, your brain goes into threat protection mode, just as when there's a physical threat. It's treating that flicker of disapproval as something to avoid at any cost. Most people pleasers figure this out early in life in their experiences with primary caregivers. As infants and young children, we need our caregivers to help soothe us, teach us to regulate, and encourage us. When that doesn't happen reliably, the child naturally adapts their behavior to try to make it happen. It doesn't necessarily mean you had bad parents. All parents fail at these things sometimes. But if you developed a sense that comfort and soothing were not reliably available, you learned that the path to getting the love and support you needed was to do what others wanted you to do. That's the psychology underneath people pleasing. It's not weakness, it's a threat detection system that makes you feel responsible for getting that positive feedback from others, and you've carried that into adulthood. When you feel rejected, or think you might be rejected, it all comes rushing back. Even though you know you're an adult in these moments, it's not unusual to actually feel like a child again on the inside. This is often not a conscious response. It can ride below the level of conscious awareness, driving your actions in powerful ways that bypass your rational mind. A friend read your message and didn't text you back, and your stomach drops. Someone's tone shifts a little bit on a phone call, and you spend the next 10 minutes replaying that conversation, looking for what you did wrong. Logically, none of this is an emergency. But logic isn't running the show in that moment. Your internal safety system is. Think about a smoke detector in your house. A good one goes off when there's an actual fire, but one that's miscalibrated goes off when you're making toast or something. Same alarm, but a wildly different amount of actual danger. People-pleasing psychology works in the same way. Somewhere back there, usually in your family of origin, your alarm got calibrated to go off at the smell of toast. A slightly disappointed tone of voice, a little silence, a raised eyebrow. None of that was ever actual danger, but your brain filed it under fire, and it's been treating minor social friction like an emergency ever since. And once that alarm is set, guilt becomes the enforcement mechanism. Guilt is the feeling that shows up to make sure you never test the alarm. It shows up before you've even said no, sometimes before you've even finished that thought, because the whole job is prevention. Guilt isn't punishing you for doing something wrong. It's punishing you in advance for something you haven't even done yet, just in case you were about to. That's why willpower is not the answer to making a change. You can know intellectually that saying no is entirely reasonable and still feel like you're doing something dangerous in the moment that you try. That's not actually a contradiction. It's your nervous system doing its job at least 10 times faster than the analytical part of your brain works. Now, most people pleasers didn't wake up one day and decide that being agreeable was the way to go. We talked a minute ago about how this often originates in childhood. Let's see what that looks like. Maybe disagreement in your house was met with withdrawal. Someone went quiet, someone got cold, and the silence was worse than any argument would have been. That kind of rejection can be devastating for someone at any age. It's like you're invisible, like you don't even exist. Maybe you were the one who kept the peace between two other people, and saying no or expressing your needs felt like it might rupture an already fragile peace. Maybe you just noticed over and over that agreeing got you warmth, having an opinion got you distance. And you didn't need many repetitions to learn that lesson. Kids are smart, they learn fast. If disapproval felt dangerous in your environment, learning to avoid it was a natural adaptation. Unfortunately, these lessons can stay with us, so the instinct to people please a parent who has all the answers can easily persist into your adult relationships. This tendency doesn't work as well in an adult relationship, though, where there's supposed to be more equity. Sometimes the training was even more direct than that. Some of you were flat out told in one way or another that good kids don't have big emotions, that having needs or an opinion of your own made you difficult, annoying, or ungrateful. I know parents who parented my generation were fond of saying things like, "Quit crying or I'll give you something to cry about." This one thing alone didn't make them bad parents. It's a parent's job to teach kids how to regulate and self-soothe. But if the mechanism for teaching that led a child to believe that their feelings and needs were consistently unacceptable, they learned to adapt. Kids learn to do anything to avoid that kind of rejection. Again, this becomes a real problem when you carry that instinct into your adult relationships. We're responsible for our own feelings, sure, but relationships are co-created, and empathy is critical for a strong relationship. If you're constantly worried that a friend or partner will be indifferent to or rejecting of your big feelings, it's only natural to deploy those same childhood strategies. It happens subconsciously until you realize what's going on. You have that WTF moment, and then you click on my videos to learn what's going on. And in our adult versions of this pattern, overfunctioning can then creep in. This is where we work so hard to make sure a relationship works by not being too much for our partner, that we carry too much of the burden in the relationship. Ironic, isn't it? You start preemptively managing everything so the question never even comes up. You anticipate needs before they're spoken, smooth out conflict before it starts. You carry logistics and moods and decisions. All of it because managing everything keeps everyone regulated. That's overfunctioning. It looks like competence. It looks like being the reliable one. But underneath it, a lot of the time, it's just guilt doing the driving, not generosity. And overfunctioning has a quiet cost that rarely gets talked about. It trains the people around you to stop checking in, to disconnect. If you always absorb the extra task, always smooth the plan before anyone has to ask, your partner starts to really reasonably assume you're fine with this arrangement because you've never given them a reason to think otherwise. Remember, you teach people how to treat you. Okay, so how do you assert yourself without feeling guilty? Well, telling someone just set a boundary, that's right up there with telling an upset person to calm down. If it were easy, nobody would be confused or frustrated. You wouldn't be here. Remember, we're talking about a lifetime of relational habits that are tied to your basic systems of safety in the body and brain. You don't rewrite that code quickly or easily. You lean into the discomfort in small ways, learn that the world won't end when you do, and then you try again. You try, you fail, sometimes you overcompensate, and then you recalibrate. Over and over until a new pattern slowly develops. But attached to that process are some basic practices you can use to help. Here they are. Number 1, separate the guilt you feel from the actual event. When guilt shows up before you've said no, pause and ask yourself one question. Is this guilt responding to something I actually did wrong? Or is it responding to the possibility that I might disappoint someone? Those two are completely different. Remember, it's not true until it happens. Guilt over an actual wrong is information. Guilt over the presumption that someone will be disappointed isn't guilt at all. That's shame, and shame is never productive. Say a friend asks you to help them move this weekend and you already have plans to rest. The worry shows up instantly, doesn't it, before you've even answered the question. Ask yourself the question, did you do something wrong by having plans to rest? No. Is the concern actually about the possibility they might be disappointed? Maybe. Once you can see that distinction clearly, you begin to tease out the difference between guilt and shame. Remember, shame is a gremlin, and the way you kill a gremlin is to shine a light on it. If you feed and water a gremlin, remember the movie Gremlins? It multiplies and turns evil, doesn't it? Automatically giving into that fear makes those shame gremlins worse. Shining a light on them by looking directly at them, that's what takes them out. Number 2, let the disappointment happen without rushing in to fix it. Now, this is easy to say and hard to do, I'm aware. You are allowed to disappoint someone and let that disappointment just exist without immediately reversing your no to make it go away. Someone's disappointment is their emotion to feel. It's not automatically your problem to solve. Practicing this, even in tiny moments, is how that alarm slowly begins to recalibrate. This is what we call, you guessed it, boundaries. Boundaries are hard and terrifying, but so very important. If you want me to do a video about improving at setting and maintaining boundaries, do me a favor, drop a comment down below. Now, number 3, use a short, boring no. You see, people pleasers tend to over-explain because more justification feels like it's going to earn more forgiveness somehow. Honestly, it usually does the opposite. I can't do that this weekend is a complete sentence. It doesn't need 3 paragraphs of reasoning behind it. Honestly, once someone hears no, they're moving on anyway. Why teach them that they always deserve an explanation from you, that there's a negotiation to be had? Number 4, expect guilt and shame responses to show up and push through asserting yourself while those are there anyway. This is honestly the most important one of these 4. You're not waiting for the guilt to disappear before you're allowed to say no or state your needs. That's actually backwards. The guilt fades after you prove to your nervous system over and over that the disapproval didn't actually destroy anything. Your behavior has to go first. The feeling catches up later. To be clear, people-pleasing is not a diagnosis, and I'm not diagnosing anyone watching this for sure. It's a pattern built out of a nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do: survive and find safety. But patterns can be retrained. That's good news, even though it may not feel like it in the moment. It's not unusual for a people pleaser to build a whole identity around being needed, being the fixer. Being a fixer, it sounds so capable, doesn't it? The problem comes when you can't express your own needs because you spent so long managing everyone else's. That's a deeper conversation that may lead us into a deep dive into codependency in the future. They're related. For now, just know that if any of this feels familiar, you are not alone. It doesn't mean you always have to say no or assert your needs over others. The challenge is to find that middle ground where you're attentive to others' needs when they need you to be and when you choose to be, but you also feel seen and heard in your needs. It takes practice, and I won't lie, it's uncomfortable. That discomfort is not a sign you're doing it wrong. It may mean that you're leaning into the exact habit that you are hoping to develop here. We'll continue this deep dive next time, so be sure you're subscribed so you get that one in your feed. Hey friends, thanks for being here today. And until next time, be well.